I wanted to take the time on this hot summer morning to do an overview of the LoD Offroad Destroyer rear bumper with tire carrier system. If you've read my blog articles or watch any of my videos about the first 60 or 90 days of ownership of my 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK Unlimited Rubicon, you've read or heard of my accessory desires as far as what I wanted to add to the vehicle, and one of the ones I prioritized is the rear bumper with tire carrier system. So the reason behind that is fundamentally I had this desire to have the ability to mount accessories to the backside of the Wrangler, specifically like a high lift jack or gas cans, roto packs, or jerry cans. And your options are very limited with the stock tailgate and tire carrier system. You can get a Rotopax mount for the wheel, but you don't want to put that with just a stock tire carrier and tailgate hinges, because it's only designed from the factory to handle a certain load, and I believe it's 85 to 90 pounds, and that includes the wheel. So you don't want to really put all that kind of load on that, and you stress out the tailgate, stress out the hinges, stress out the body that the hinges are attached to. And so that's when I started looking into the TerraFlex upgraded tailgate hinges with their tire carrier system. It looked intriguing, but I was not impressed with the accessory mount options. And two, you're still reliant on the tailgate bearing that load. And so I looked into other things out there, and that's when I came across tire carriers integrated with a rear bumper. And what I liked about those is, one, you're offloading all that load to the rear bumper and then the frame. So your wheel and any accessories you put on that tire carrier that the wheel is on would be on the frame. And two, those systems, they had a lot more flexible options as far as accessory mounts. And the way they did their accessory mount systems, you could customize your own if you were so inclined with steel and working with steel. And so that's when I started looking into those systems into more detail, and that's when I came across LoD Offroad and their Destroyer rear bumper with tire carrier, which I now have installed on my 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK Unlimited Rubicon. So let's go ahead and go over the features very quickly, and then we'll go into a segment where I cover the things I like and the things I don't like about this whole setup. As you can see here, it's a black powder coated all steel bumper. It's a full width. You can go with either a full width or the short width. They call the short width. Full width is basically from the end of the fender flare to the end of the fender flare, just like your stock OEM rear bumper. The short one is basically goes from corner to corner of the body. And since I'm not building a rock crawler, I decided to go with the full width so I can get the same width protection as the factory bumper. Black powder coated all steel. Comes with two shackle mounts, so you can put your toe shackles there if you needed to, one on each side. You've got a receiver hitch right here, and it's toe rated. On each side you have these light mounts, these cutouts in the bumper, and those are interchangeable bezels. So the cutouts in the bumpers have 4 screws for each hole, which facilitates these interchangeable bezels that you come in from the backside to change them out. If you were to buy this rear bumper system from a authorized dealer, such as Northridge 4x4, which is where I bought mine, it'll come with these blank bezels, so no lights. Or if you buy them from LoD Offroad, you have direct from them. You can tell them which light bezels you want with your bumper, or you can just buy the bezels, as an aftermarket accessory. If you decide to switch lights for some odd reason, you can get a new light bezel. But basically, the light bezels come in a few different options. One is a round cutout one, which facilitates the LoD Offroad halogen light system, which I didn't really want. Or you can go with some square cutout options, which facilitates Rigid Industries D-Series lights. You can go with the D-Series surface mounts, D-Series XLs, or the D-Series flush mounts. And I went with the Rigid Industries D-Series flush mounts with a flood pattern. Works really well. I tried them at night, those lights in the back. They're great for backing up into a garage or something, or off-road to see what's behind you. Really cool. I mean, I like having these lights on here, so definitely if you're going to buy this bumper system, or any bumper system, see if you can get them with light mounts. Anyway, we'll talk about the lights in a few moments. Black powder coated, all steel, full width, shackle mounts, receiver hitch, toe rated, light mounts. But that leads us to the key feature, obviously, is the integrated tire carrier system, and that is a spindle on the passenger side, ball bearing system, sleeve bearings, top and bottom packed with grease, serviceable. You can pop the spindle off with a 1.5 inch socket, which I had to buy a socket because I didn't have a 1.5 inch socket. And but that whole system that leads to this tire carrier here, the key feature with this is the fact that you can operate the tailgate and the tire carrier together, or you can do it independently without tools. So basically, there's a quick release attachment lever that holds the tire carrier to the tailgate. But let's just show the quick operation here. Just open up your tailgate as normal. Swings out open, swings out smoothly. There's a detent there, like the natural detent in the hinges that holds that tailgate into place. Then you close the tailgate, moves smoothly, just like butter. It's very smooth, the ball bearings are great. If you were so inclined and you needed to get behind the tire carrier to get your accessory, say a high lift jack, or if you need to separate it to clean your tailgate, just hit this quick release latch or mechanism here, separate it, and there you go. Now your tire carrier is independent of the tailgate. It moves very smoothly. That ball bearing system is excellent. You can just do a quick view on the back side here. It's the fact that you have these mount areas for the LoD Offroad mounts, accessory mounts. Basically, we're gonna hook it back up. There's the quick release mechanism. Just pop it back on. Then you can close your tailgate like that. That's kind of it of the quick overview, and we're going to go ahead and do some close-ups here of the various features that I got with this system, because you can see the third brake light mount, which does not come standard. I bought that after the fact, and the antenna mount, I bought that after the fact, but we'll go ahead and do a close-up of that in the next segments here, and we'll discuss a few of these features more into detail. Here's a close-up of the bezel, or the cutout in the rear bumper with the interchangeable bezel for the lights. You can see it's recessed. And I think the reason why you need to recess it is one, you don't want it completely flush with it, obviously, because you're not going to have place for the screws, because they wanted to keep this aesthetically pleasing, so you don't have the screw ends, either the bolts on the backside or the threads exposed. So there's welded mounts there on the inside here behind the rear bumper surface that were the screws for the plates or the bezels come into play here, or they mount to. When they did the recess though, there's two holes here on the bottom here inside that you can't really see until you come up in this angle, and I'll go ahead and pop this camera off real quick. If I can show you this and somehow focus this while the video is recording, you can see that there's holes there. Basically, they did this in order to facilitate the ability for any moisture or water buildup there will just float out, and so it won't result in rust and whatnot. So there's a really intuitive design feature there. So it's really nice that you have that design come into play there. But basically, that's pretty much it as far as the lights are concerned. If you think the recess would affect the floods, it doesn't. The flood pattern, it works out fairly well. I don't know what the spread is on the floods. I'm not entirely sure if it's 40 degrees or 60 degrees, but no, the recess does not affect that whatsoever. If you're going to get spots, it won't even matter. The spots will clear this recessed opening really easily, but the floods are just fine. Here's a close-up of the inside of the tailgate and tire carrier. Basically, just move the third brake light harness aside. You basically have 3 points, contact points. You have this steel, I can't remember what they call these things, but I'm going to just call this a receiver, and that's a receiver plate. This receiver and receiver plate go together. They mate up when they close. And then you have these two rubber stoppers or bumpers. They operate as sort of all these two rubber stoppers or bumpers along with this receiver mount or mechanism here. It basically acts as an anti-rattle system, so you have to adjust all three of those when you're setting up this tire carrier or installing everything, because once you set everything up correctly, it prevents the whole mechanism from rattling or won't move. So these are all adjustable, and then you have to do these, during install. But the key point of this is a close-up of this quick release mechanism here. This is basically what holds the tailgate to the tire carrier, or the tire carrier to the tailgate. It's basically a plunger mechanism. I'm trying to do this with one hand, better with both so you can control it, but basically just pop it off, and then you have that little ball there, which I put grease on there, and then pretty much that's it. And if you need to reattach everything, if I can do this with one hand here, pretty much just connect that, control the tailgate, and then sorry, it's a little pain in the butt when you're trying to do it with camera in hand, but basically that's it right there. And then that's all. So that's kind of how that whole system mates together. So you can see here, or maybe you can't see here, that's kind of the contact point there, and there's one back there, but I'll come back around on this side. You might be able to see a little bit more, and that's pretty much where it all meets up. So you got those 3 contact points, and then I guess technically that's the 4th is the actual quick release mechanism. It's a quick close-up of the tailgate plate required for the LoD Offroad Destroyer tire carrier. Basically replaces your OEM tire carrier. The plate uses the same bolts. You can see that you have the 3 mount points or contact points that I mentioned earlier. Receiver mount, which is basically this polymer deal with receiver plate mount, whatever you want to call it. Polymer meets kind of a wedge deal. The 2 rubber bumpers, which are adjustable. This is also adjustable depending on how your whole thing is all installed. Then I have the LoD Offroad third brake light, LoD Offroad CV antenna mount. The CV antenna mount goes pretty much in the same spot that the Mopar mount would have gone, but you need their mount in order to clear their tailgate plate. And here's a close-up of the back of the tire carrier. You can see all these slats here. These are basically going to facilitate the various accessory mounts that they offer for this tire carrier system. Got this quick release mechanism here. You can see it's on this, got a rubber sleeve protecting it, but basically it's on the same type of ball mount there. And this is also adjustable. The tire mount itself, that's sort of adjustable it is adjustable based on the width of your tire. So if you have a wider tire, you need more clearance, you can move it up a notch. You can also move out the tire as you need to, depending on how wide it is. So it's pretty much a fully adjustable system. I'm going to take this point in time to start talking about a few of the caveats and criticisms I have of this whole system that I discovered when I was installing it and after I installed it. But we'll start with the third brake light because I knew about this beforehand. When I was looking at their website, LoD Offroad, I saw their photos, and the third brake light accessory made the brake light look like it was sitting off-center towards the passenger side of the vehicle. And so I asked them about it. So why is that? It's like, oh, it's because it's actually offset because of the quick release mechanism mount. And so this third brake light mount was actually designed when they came out with their Signature Series rear bumper. And so they adapted to this Destroyer bumper, and when they adapted to the Destroyer bumper, they realized that this quick release mechanism they designed and the way it's mounted blocks the holes that will accept the L brackets for the third brake light. So they just decided to drill the holes off center. Okay, I guess that makes sense. But what I looked at when I received it is I looked at the photos of the third brake light adapter on their website, and I just looked at it for a few seconds. Why can't I just run the L brackets reverse? As you can see up close, the L brackets here are actually on the inside of the third brake light body. They're supposed to sit on the opposite side, but I moved them to the inside, and I said, you know what, if I move the driver's side inside, the passenger side, if I move the L bracket inside, all I need to do is just drill a hole here and it will pretty much sit very, very close to center. I think it's just barely off center if you look at it. I think if you base it off this venting here, it's actually going to be off center to the driver's side, not the passenger side. But that's like so slight that I can live with that, as opposed to being really off center towards the passenger side. And so I said, you know what, let's go ahead and do it, and drilled this hole here. You can see the existing hole for where it should have been had I mounted it with these brackets outside of the third brake light mount body. Anyway, that's one little thing about this whole system, is the fact that that sits off center from the factory, and you'll have to drill it if you want to make it more on center. The antenna mount, I had to cut the back side of the antenna mount because it wouldn't clear the bolt here, or this my coaxial cable. It was bumping up against the back side of it. And let's see if I can get an actual different view here. as you can see here, yeah, there you go. This is too wide, this base of this coaxial cable, and so the cable here, I had to pretty much trim off the backside of it in order for it to clear, and then painted it so it wouldn't get rust. The next two criticisms or caveats that I'm going to discuss are the more serious issues that you should be well aware of if you're considering buying the LoD Offroad Destroyer rear bumper with tire carrier system. I have the tire carrier right now independent of the tailgate, great features I mentioned earlier, but it does swing freely. And if this swings freely with the tire on, it'll actually hit the passenger rear fender. Not a big deal. But if you were to swing out with a lot of force, you could deform the fender, which would be bad. That's not the more serious thing though. This is still the first criticism, by the way. If you had the wheel off the tire carrier, there's nothing stopping the tire carrier arm from making contact with the body. If you can see this little corner here of the arm, that will make contact with the body if the tire carrier is off, or sorry, the wheel is off the tire carrier and the tire carrier were to swing freely towards the Jeep. And there's actually an indent there right now because it happened probably during install and didn't notice it until a few days later when I was looking at it and taking photos here in the sunlight, and there's a small indent where this made contact apparently while my father and I were trying to get this all set up, and it must have struck when we weren't paying attention, and it left a small indent there, which is barely there. But if it struck with a lot more force, I can only imagine that that dent would be more severe. So I kind of wish they put a safety here. In my head, I mean, just after like 5 minutes of thinking, one thing I can think of that they could have done was drill a threaded hole into the top of the rear bumper where you can put like a brass stud with, say, a nylon or a rubber coating on it, so that if this were to swing open, it would just strike that post. And you know, being brass, it would just be soft, so it wouldn't really cause damage to the arm or to the steel bumper. And you can make it threaded so you can take it out and replace it if it were to become deformed. Two, you could have done the same thing but use a rubber stopper like they have those bumpers on the tailgate plate as a safety. Granted, that would look a lot less attractive, but I would much rather accept that less aesthetically looking bumper than damage on the corner of my Jeep. So, number one, that freely swinging tire carrier could be something that may dissuade you from purchasing the system. You have to be well aware of the whole thing when you're using it, especially if you're on an incline. Right now I'm on a slight incline facing forward, and so if you let this kind of sit, and gravity's gonna let that thing swing because the ball bearings are very smooth, and so it lets that thing operate very easily. So gravity alone is enough if it's just not level to allow this tire carrier to sort of just move on its own. But right now, trying to get past that level point, so yeah, on this incline that I'm on, yeah. Anyway, this is not the first thing that we're going to talk about with this whole mechanism. The second caveat here involves tire carrier being attached to the tailgate. The second issue that I want to discuss is related to the tailgate and tire carrier mechanism, but it is not as severe as the one prior where the tire carrier arm can actually hit the body of the Jeep. But this one is basically going to occur when the tire carrier and tailgate are operating together. And so right now I have them attached to each other. But everyone who owns the Jeep Wrangler understands that, or at least the JKs, the tailgate hinges, they stop at this little detent here. And so it kind of naturally sits here. It won't really move back and forth. And so it's kind of to help it if it's on an incline or decline. But past this detent in the hinge, it actually can move a little bit farther past that point. And the problem is with this tire carrier arm is if you let it hit beyond that point, if you're on an incline like we are on now, or I am on now, that spindle makes contact with the the lower tailgate hinge cover. But I have this camera in hand and I'll just show you a close-up of that. And right now you can see that the spindle and the lower tailgate hinge cover are making contact. And if I open it up just a little bit, you might be able to see that there's actually a mark there right now because I made that mark when I'm doing this testing of this whole system to find these little flaws. But let me do a little bit more close up. There you go. There's like that slight little gray mark moving horizontally. It's not so much a big deal in so much as that that's plastic. It's replaceable, the hinge cover. Granted, it's like 25 bucks, I think, if you buy it, an actual Mopar hinge cover. But that's still one little detail regarding this whole thing that it's kind of annoying, the fact that it can do that. And there's not really much you can do to mitigate that. If this opens with a lot more force, I don't know if you'll crack that cover or what you can do with the hinges. So I'm just wondering if they should put like a little bumper behind the spindle just to prevent, at least to act as a stopper. I'm actually thinking about doing that myself and just putting like putting adhesive and a rubber strip there, just enough to keep that from making contact. But it looks like it's just actually it's not actually the spindle so much as the cap for the spindle that's making contact. So I don't know if there's really much you can do there. I think it's actually the cap. So I'm not sure if I'll put some rubber there or what, but yeah, that's sort of like a minor annoyance there. Nowhere near as serious as the tire carrier hitting the body, but it's still there nonetheless. And so one thing I wanted to point out that you should be well aware of regarding this system. That's the basic overview of the LoD Offroad Rear Destroyer bumper with tire carrier system. Hopefully this helps you out as far as making a decision on whether or not this is for you. I know I've talked about a couple of pretty severe, I think some people consider them severe issues. They're kind of just inherent with the design of this type of system. Granted, I did mention a couple of mitigations or safeties that could have been put into place that could help this out. But as the days go along, I'll admit that I was a little bit disappointed after I installed everything and discovered a lot of these caveats. A little bit disappointed with the setup, right? Because I was really excited about getting this whole system, installing it. It's like, yeah, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna be able to put my high lift jack, which I don't have on here, it's sitting in the garage, because I don't really need it right now. But it'd be nice to have the high lift jack if I go to the range, you know, go off-roading, go out into the desert or whatnot. High lift jack would be nice to have there. If I want the roto packs or jerry can mounts, it'd be great to have those on there. And I can mount other accessories. If I need to put my power tank on the outside, I could do that, or a separate tank. Lots of flexibility here. I was really excited about that. And then you find these little details, you're like, oh man, you know, the install was a little bit, getting everything adjusted took some time. You got to read the manual. And one thing I want to bring up about the manual is the fact that the manual or the instructions that came with it did not match the revision on the website. Website had a later revision that was actually dated June of this year. And the video that they have online on YouTube to cover the install missed did not cover two items. There's actually two vertical cross bolts that you put on the rear bumper. Comes with the bumper. Those bolts come with the bumper. The manual talks about drilling those holes, but the revision instructions exclude them. They don't mention those, and they also don't mention putting the bolts in there, and the video never talks about it. And so I was looking at that, consulted my father about that, because my father's like a way better mechanic than I am. And he's thinking, if they don't have them in there, and we're looking at it, it's like, you probably don't need it. It'd be nice to have it, but to drill those two vertical holes through that rear frame rail, from the top of the frame rail to the bottom of the frame rail, may not need to be done. And so right now they're excluded. Kind of wish they said, instead of including the manual, if you're gonna make revisions, should just say, here's the website, go get it, right? Or email us, we'll send you them for the most up-to-date revision. And that will be that. But that little detail with those two cross bolts, as well as the fact that they don't give you warnings about the whole tire carrier moving freely, that whole issue there, or that they should have mentioned that. I think that should have been a warning on the first page. You know, people just aren't thinking about that at the time when they're installing it, because they're worried about other things like getting the whole bumper level and making sure that the contact points are correctly adjusted along with the arm. Like, there's so many little things to think about. Kind of wish they'd include that in the instructions. But all these criticisms aside, and like I said, my excitement and my enthusiasm about the whole system kind of waned. But as the days are going by, I'm really appreciating this system. I have the high lift jack mount on the way, so eventually I'll do that, and I'm gonna decide if I'm gonna go roto packs or jerry can mounts. We'll see what happens there. And I think I'm really growing back into the whole system. I love it that it moves very smoothly with the tailgate. The spindle, it's great, it's serviceable. You just 1.5-inch socket, you can pop the cap off, re-grease everything if you need to. In an emergency, you can take it off if you need to. Take it off, the tire carrier off the spindle, but I think it's really good. It's just that freely swinging tire carrier system should have been addressed in the manual, and they should have made a safety. That if they had done that, I don't think I would be as critical as I am now about this whole setup. But yeah, I'm gonna write an article. Actually, today is July 7th, so I've already wrote 99% of the article. I'm just doing a lot of editing and tweaking to the text. But when I release that later next week, this video should also be out. So you can also, if you're watching this video, you should be able to go to my website at ocabj.net and read my article covering all these things in more detail, with a lot more photos and my thought processes behind this whole rear bumper and tire carrier system. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this helps you make a more informed decision on whether or not you want to go with the LoD Offroad Destroyer rear bumper and tire carrier, or if you're going to go with another option like Poison Spider or Metal Cloak. It's a bunch of other options out there that make a system such that the tire carrier is on the rear bumper. But I think LoD Offroad is a little bit more unique from the others in the way that it works as far as independent usage of the tire carrier with the tailgate or having them free swing together. And that's a unique mechanism. All their accessory mounts that they're making, that sets it apart from them. But then again, you may not need these things. You might be able to get away with the Poison Spider. And had I been able to see this in person, it would have prepared me better to make this decision and know what I'm getting into before I bought it. I probably still would have bought this, but I would have just been well prepared for all the little caveats and nuances during the install and post-install. The only rear bumper and tire carrier system I saw in person was the Poison Spider. I think it's called the Rock Brawler. I saw it at some local off-road expos. Not even their booth. It was some random guy in a Jeep, had his Jeep in an area, and so I was looking at it. He wasn't even around. I was just looking at it, so I couldn't get any more hands-on. And it's unfortunate with how these accessory manufacturers are based. A lot of them are regional, and so you really can't see their stuff in stores because it's hard for them to get like not international, but nationwide dealers, right? I think Poison Spider is in SoCal, so you can go see them. A lot of their products around here because they're highly represented by owners, Jeep owners and whatnot, because everyone's using Poison Spider. LoD Offroad, I think they're in Indiana, so they don't have anybody in California selling their product that I know of, at least not in SoCal. So I can't really see these things in person. And so in order to make a decision on these types of products or these accessories, you really need to rely on other people. And so that's why I'm publishing this video and publishing my article. Hopefully help you make a better decision on what rear bumper and tire carrier you want to go with, even if you want to go with this type of system. Maybe you're just going to go back with the TerraFlex upgraded hinges, and that'll make you, or that'll satisfy your needs as far as your Jeep is concerned. Anyway, that's enough discussion for now. That is a summary of the LoD Offroad Destroyer rear bumper full width with tire carrier system. Hopefully this helps you out. Definitely, again, check out my website, ocabj.net, to get more information about this whole system. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll try to answer them as best I can. I'm not an expert on all this stuff, but again, I'm just trying to give you my viewpoints and what I've found, and hopefully that will just give you more information to work off of in order to make your decision a lot easier when it comes to buying this type of accessory for your vehicle. Thanks for watching.